Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Latino Comics Expo Worldwide. My name is Simone Moffett, and I'm the graphic designer here at the Museum of Latin American Art. On behalf of MOLA in Long Beach, California, I'd like to thank you for joining us today as we celebrate the Latinx Arts and Comic Expo. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our event sponsors that made it possible for this week-long event to be offered free of charge. Here's a brief welcome from our presenting sponsor, Hyundai.
On behalf of Hyundai Motor America, we welcome you to the 2020 Latino Comic Expo. As part of our Hispanic Heritage Celebration, we are thrilled to sponsor this great event. We hope that you enjoy the amazing Latino talent that will be featured.
Additional support was provided by San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, the Josephine S. Gumbiner Foundation, the Robert Gumbiner Foundation, the City of Long Beach, and the Arts Council of Long Beach. Your host and moderator for today is Josh Trujillo, who is a writer and editor and game designer based in Los Angeles. He's the creator of Dodge City, Lost Beast, Found Friend, and has written for DC and Marvel Comics. So at this time, I'd like to present Josh Trujillo.
Hi there, thank you, Simone, and thank you, Mola, and also Hyundai. I'm Josh Trujillo, and I'll be your moderator for Queer Voices and New Frontiers here at Latino Comics Expo. Comics are moving forward in a lot of major ways, and the queer perspective is just one part of that. There are amazing Latino creators out there focusing on history, current events, and of course, the immigrant experience. I want to celebrate the work of our creators to the forefront of this changing landscape. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce all of my panelists. If you guys want to turn your video on. Perfect. And I'll start off with you, Terry. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work, and if you prefer, your pronouns. I am he, him, by the way.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, my name is Terry Blas. I am the co-writer of the graphic novel from Oni, Deadweight. The art on that is by Matthew Seeley, and I am the writer of the young adult graphic novel Hotel Dare with art by Claudia Aguirre, who's also here. Hi, Claudia. And my pronouns are he, him. But like, if you're like, hey girl, like, I don't care. Yeah, I've been working in comics professionally for about 8 years. I'm working on another project right now that will be out next year with Claudia. And I've got several other things in the works as well.
Well, Claudia's ears are probably burning, so we'll go straight to Claudia. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia Aguirre. I am a she/her person, and I love working with comics. I am the co-writer of Hotel Dare at this moment, and I drew Hotel Dare too. I'm working with Terry on another amazing novel. I hope to do this all my life.
Beautiful. And Kat, please introduce yourself to the group.
Hello, my name is Kat Fajardo. My pronouns are she and they, and I am a comic artist and illustrator of Honduran Colombian descent. I make a lot of comics, mostly autobio about my experience as a Latinx dealing with, issues growing up with identity and all that. And I also work doing like YA and middle grade work as well. And right now I'm working on a graphic novel for middle graders with Scholastic Graphics called Miss Quinces. And yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Beautiful. And Jacoby.
Hi there, my name is Jacoby. I do he, him, and I'm a comic artist. I'm currently working on a young adult graphic novel with my co-creator Julio Anta. It's called Frontera, and it's being published by Harper Alley, and it should be coming out hopefully in 2023. And I've had multiple short stories also with Julio featured in Panel X Panel, and yeah, just a lot of cool stuff.
Awesome. Baruch.
Hi, everybody. Buenas tardes. My name is Baruch Porras Hernandez, and I am a writer and performer, sometimes stand-up comic. I'm also an illustrator and the creator of the online comic Tiny Baruch. And the project I'm most excited about right now is We Can Be Heroes, which is a Latinx queer superhero group that I co-created with other amazing Latino queer writers, one of which is Terry Blas. That's the character he created. Right over here, one of my favorites, and happy to be here.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Krissa.
Hi, hello. Nice to see everyone, or nice to meet you if I haven't met you before. My name is Chris Sagona. In drag, she, her, hers. As an illustrator and comic writer, I also go, or mostly went by Cris Bas Mendonça. I'm originally from Brazil. I have created comic strips since I was in Brazil before I moved to the US. I have a series of comic strips called Out and About, which are also translated to English. I also have been working for the Matthew Shepard Foundation, creating comics for them monthly for 5 years. And I also do drag, and I put all of this in my comics as well.
Awesome. So during tonight's discussion, we're going to have a lot of opportunities for you guys to chime in as well, the listeners, the viewers. So feel free to use the Q&A area to submit questions, and we'll get to that at the end of the panel. We're going to be discussing the changing face of comics, and as we all know, over the past few years, that face is starting to look a lot more like us. As kind of a relatively new phenomenon in the history of comics, you know, women, queer people, trans people, they've really been excluded from the mainstream comic scene, but rapidly that's changing. I'm not sure I saw a book with a Latino creator, let alone main character, probably until I was in my 20s in college. And so just to see how much that's changed towards YA and especially younger readers. But I'm kind of curious where everyone got their start, their first taste of comics, what kind of drew them there, what made them passionate about it. Baruch, I know your background's very similar to mine and how we fell in love with comics, so I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, well, I was born in Toluca, Mexico, and I grew up there. And when I was 5, I remember seeing on televisions the show Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which over there was El Spider-Man y sus Super Amigos, or something like that. And I remember there was one episode where the X-Men guest starred, and it blew my little 5-year-old mind because Spider-Man was cool. I had a crush on Iceman, but I was like, who are these? Like these freaky weirdos that I just fell in love with. And then we moved to the US. I didn't hear anything about them till I was about 10. This boy I had a crush on gave me a Marvel card as a present, and I had Rogue on it. And that's when I first saw Rogue. And because I had such a crush on him, I was like, I will treasure this forever.
I feel like if someone gave me a Rogue card, if I got a Rogue card today, I'd probably just marry that person on the spot.
Right? So since that day, she's been my favorite character. I started reading the comics. My parents wouldn't let me buy them. I had to like buy one in secret from the local, back then, this is how old I am, there was baseball card stores that were starting to sell comic books. Because there wasn't a comic book store in my little town that I lived in yet. And so that's when I started reading them. I fell in love and have been an X-Men fan, hardcore X-Men fan ever since.
Amazing. And Kat, kind of where did you get your start in the comics or cartooning?
I actually started off as a fine artist in high school and kind of made my way towards comics by spending my after schools at Barnes and Noble, kind of in the manga and comics section, because I had no life. I mean, I still do that nowadays too. But, and that's, you know, I grew up with Archie comics. And so that was like, Archie comics and manga was like my thing. But then in Barnes and Nobles, I saw this like graphic novel, and I think it was my first like, I guess, American graphic novel, and it was Love and Rockets. And from there, I just kind of like, it blew my mind. It was something like I never experienced before. And like seeing queer characters, you know, just like characters that I can relate to. Like, it was just like, I don't know, it was just like I don't know, like a holy experience basically. And from there on, I'm just like, oh, who is this? Like, who made this? And I kind of went down a rabbit hole of finding other comics similar to that. And even, getting into like X-Men as well. Like, it was just like so mind blowing. So then from there on, I kind of figured like, this is what I want to do. I want to create stories just like, Jaime Hernandez and all these other like talented artists. And from there on, I just went to like SVA, School of Visual Arts for cartooning, and kind of made my path from there.
I used to skip so many college classes to go to Borders that like I knew when the new trades were coming out. So I'm like, I got to get there so I can read the new whatever and not pay for it.
Yeah.
Jacoby, were you also stealing content as a youth, or how did you first fall in love with comics?
I mean, definitely stealing content, definitely tracing when I first started out. I feel like a lot of us kind of have the same introduction, and especially with like X-Men. I feel like for me, at least my era, it was X-Men Evolution. I think that was just like perfect concept. But I started getting, well, I didn't have the idea of becoming a cartoonist or a comic artist in the beginning, but like I knew that I was not good at anything else. So I was like, I have to find something with drawing. And then like the first time I went to a comic book store, I was just like, whoa, there's drawings in these books and I could do this. And so I kind of stuck with that. And also like I also went to SVA, and I learned quite a bit there, but then I just dropped out because I was like, this is a lot of money. And I've just kind of been, I just really enjoy comics, and I think I've found what I like.
Yeah, the tracing really gets to me because I used to trace over Garfield comic strips and rearrange them to make, I'm sure that's how they make them now. Like they can't be new drawings of Garfield left, right? But
Yep.
I was definitely doing that. Chris, I wanted to talk a little bit about you. How did you fall in love with comics?
I think for me, I used to read books and read comics in the newsstand. And then until I would read it until the owner would tell me to go away because I wasn't buying anything because, I didn't have the money to buy everything I wanted. And I think occasionally my father would bring this comic for kids in Brazil called Turma da Mônica, Monica's Gang. And that was like really easy read, and it was very cute, and it's still like it's an empire today in Brazil. It's still going since the 60s. Then of course X-Men, no wonder why, right? And then I fell in love with anime and automatically manga, but I lived in a small town, so I had to like import. I actually did it once. I called this bookstore in a big city and then asked them to buy one for me from Japan because it was so expensive that I only did it once. And I had to call from a friend's house without them knowing because calling to a different city was very expensive as well. I think that's how I got into it, like this mix of Brazilian comics, anime and manga, and Marvel, especially the X-Men.
I never thought about anime and manga influencing your style, but I totally see it now.
Right.
Claudia, do you want to tell us a little bit of kind of how did you fall for comics?
Well, I actually started with cartoons. I really love cartoons. It was like my most favorite thing ever as a child. And I really wanted to make something that resembled cartoons. So I just did these horrible drawings with dialogues, and it was something silly, right? So at some point I grew up and I finally, like everyone else, I discovered manga. I discovered anime first, and I was completely blown away. Like,
do you have a favorite manga?
In Latin America, anime was extremely popular because it was a serialized episodes that you could watch over the course of years, and everyone was like super into it. So I got super into it, obviously, and I started trying to collect manga because it was really, really hard at first. But then they started importing and making the Mexican versions of these mangas. So I made my parents buy me a bunch of really shitty translated manga. It was really good. And they hated it at first, but then they just let me buy my little mangas, and I got at some point I discovered that that was exactly what I wanted to do, and the rest is history. I just went to anime conventions and met my bestie, and then with my bestie Eva Cabrera, and we started making our own comics, and then we suddenly we're here right now. So
that's fantastic. What was your favorite anime when you were growing up?
Oh my God, it was Ranma. Ranma Hub was amazing, and it was a hit in Mexico. Like everyone loved it. And
that's a sexy show for kids.
It was. I've always been like really way beyond my years for some reason. So all the jokes, actually, I understood them, and they were funny for me. And my parents, like they knew, and they watched it with me, and they knew it was like super dirty, but it was funny to them. So we enjoyed it as a family. I think it was something really weird that we did together, but it was really fun. I was like 13. I wasn't like a kid anyway, so yeah. I think it was okay.
Okay, that's the right age. I was thinking like
sort of like 12, 13.
No. And Terry, where did your first inspirations come from? Was it always comics and cartooning, or did you kind of follow from another field to that?
No, I'm gonna sound like a broken record because X-Men, I discovered Ranma 1/2 when I was like 16. I just found out it was called Ranma Half in Mexico, and it blew my mind. I got into a big fight over it with my friend Chucchio. But yeah, I had all those same kind of like inspirations. I was the same age, or I was the right age, like when the X-Men cartoon in the 90s came out, that it like imprinted on me. That led me to, because I loved cartoons, but that led me to want to know, like, I want to know more adventures of these people, and realizing as a little kid that those were, there was a whole bunch of comics and stories about them, led me to pick those comics up. And then I think when I was around 16, there was an imprint that was called like Cliffhanger, I think. And they had books that were like Danger Girl and Battle Chasers and like all these comics, and Crimson, like they were perfect for me because I also had discovered at that age like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is my favorite thing of all time. And so being able to like read stories and relate to stories through comics was really meaningful for me, even though like as a kid I read like Bone and like Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes and stuff, but like being able to read comics through my teen years really, I think, sort of fueled my want and need to draw and write. So I went to art school in Portland, where I live. And then after that, sort of started networking and meeting other people, because a lot of comic artists live in Portland, and joined a studio and have been working in comics ever since.
Now you mentioned kind of Bone. Was it Bone, Garfield, and I forget the third one? But I guess
Calvin and Hobbes.
So I'd say between the three, I guess, is Hotel Dare. This is for Claudia as well. Which one is Hotel Dare most like? Your graphic together.
Of the three, well, I can see a little bit of Bone in it in terms of it being like an adventure, but the way that Calvin goes into his imagination and visits all these different like places and can become all these different people, that's very much like our graphic novel Hotel Dare. This is that book.
Tell a little bit about it.
Sure. It's a story about three siblings who get sent to live with their like estranged, creepy Mexican grandma, Mama Lupe, in a rundown hotel that she owns. And while cleaning, they discover that every room in the hotel like leads to a different magical world, and that Grandma Mama Lupe likely doesn't own this hotel by coincidence. So I don't know, Claudia can add whatever she wants, I guess. I don't want to take up all the time.
Well, it's really cute and everyone should buy it. That's what I want to buy your book. It's very good.
Claudia, I'm in love with your style and so much of the details of the hotel. It makes it feel really alive. Is there like a particular movie or a book or something you went to kind of inspire you?
Honestly, there's a bunch of things that inspired me, but it was mostly Terry's art directing because he's really specific. So he was like extremely specific on what he wanted on every single page. So I just followed his lead and we made something really beautiful.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was mostly trying to get this world made together, and he gave me a bunch of references for like the Winchester home.
Mhm.
That's what we wanted to the hotel to feel like, and the words were like free game. Just did whatever I wanted. He liked it, so that was fine.
How would you say your collaborative, did you guys work very closely? It sounds like you guys worked very closely on all the details. So Terry kind of had a clear idea and he kind of art directed you in a little bit of those ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because,
He always has the exact idea of what he wants, and he makes sure that all of his ideas are in the script. And I just try to mind read him.
mhm.
I will say that hopefully, like when we work together, I feel like my scripts are very technical because I told Claudia, like, that's the best way for me to get everything out of my head. But I said, like, if you think of a better way, like there should be 4 panels instead of 5 on this one or whatever, like, I don't care as long as the story still comes across. I know that because I'm also an illustrator, I have like a visual idea of what I'm looking for. And so I do sort of like art direct in the way of like, oh no, this needs to be green and this needs to be whatever. I like to tell story with color.
Mhm.
Sort of like a Disney movie, just like, you know, like Belle's the only one who wears blue in Beauty and the Beast in the town. Like everybody in Aladdin that's evil is like red, like stuff like that. I just like to kind of put in these color cues and hints of things. But I I forget sometimes that because most of my work now is writing, that I forget that I can draw until Claudia like, oh yeah, this is what I'm thinking, and like do a sketch. But I would hope that anyone I work with feels like that they still have ownership of like what they can do.
Jacoby, you work really closely with a writer, Julio Anta, and you guys have your upcoming graphic novel, Frontera.
Mhm.
Kind of how does your process compare to maybe Terry and Claudia's? And tell us a little bit about Frontera.
As far as I know, I don't think Julio has like a artist background, but I mean, he may surprise me. But we're at least well, most of our stories are very collaborative, except like the first one that we did, but that was also like the first time we've worked together. So,
Mhm.
you know, but even then, like we kind of, even for our first project, like there's like a little bit like, hey, how about this? How about this instead? And like, uh, it is pretty easy working with him specifically, just because like we're very much on the same like uh mindset. Like
Yeah.
we text each other frequently, and like we're like, hey, let's do this, and then like we would text each other like at the same time, and it would basically be like the same idea, and we'd just be like, wow.
Uh,
um
yeah, please.
but as far as like, not saying like even with other collaborator or collaborator, I don't know how to talk, but with other people too, it's still like the same thing. Like they're very much they like to hear what I say, and I feel like since I really want to like like I write my own stories even, I
Mhm.
feel like I probably say way too much for an idea, and they're just like, okay, how about we just meet in the middle to do this? And yeah.
We've teamed up with Julio a few times on a lot of like, I'd say kind of socially conscious work.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of Between Two Worlds and The Price of Freedom, a couple of mini comics you've done. And it's kind of, there always been this, I'll say activist, but maybe you can push back, activist streak to your work, or?
I would say that's mostly Julio's fault. Not saying like, I really like the message that he gives though. I'm always like with it 100%, like, especially with Between Two Worlds. My favorite thing about that is that like, for each page, there's a setup where it's like kind of these white friends. There's just a summary, Between Two Worlds is about the policing of like masks during coronavirus in New York. And one deals with like Puerto Rican kid in Harlem, and like these like white friends that are just hanging out, I think on the west side, I don't know. And it kind of shows like a comparison between the struggles between, or just the struggles or the similarities, contrast, I don't know, between the two. And my favorite thing that Julio added was like having like headlines from actual news articles and kind of showing like, hey, this is actually happening. And Julio is definitely like a very vocal person on what he thinks. And I'm always like with him, or like I will stand by him for those, and because I agree with all of them. And yeah.
So Krissa, you're not just an activist. I consider you like a real life superhero. You're like a cartoonist, you're a writer, you're a performer, you're a TED Talk speaker, and you're just like an ingenue.
I'm just a Gemini, that's what I am.
You're just a Gemini, maybe that's what I meant to say. Your TED Talk from Shame to Pride was really empowering, I thought, and I watched it this week, and I just kind of found, I really related to your story about kind of growing up and being forced into the closet and kind of having to act aggressively heterosexual as like a protection. And I just kind of wanted to talk about the origins of your drag persona, Krissa Gunna, and maybe the origins of the name as well.
Right. So my TED Talk, which I gave it back in March, so I had given a talk at CSU, Colorado State University, in October at this diversity symposium. And then after that, like TED got in touch and said like, hey, do you want to give this talk at TEDx, which is also at Colorado State University. And then I thought, well, you know, I don't want to give the same talk, which was basically about my work as a comic artist. The same talk that Terry actually watched in Portland like 2.5 years ago, which was a very, very simple talk. But then I wanted to tell a personal story also using my comics. And so what I explore in my comics is basically growing up queer in Brazil in the early 90s and with a father from the army in this in this small town or many small towns around the country, and just the culture, which is very homophobic and very heteronormative and sexist. And I touch subjects such as sexism and machismo because those things were deeply rooted in my family. So I mentioned also like my father and his, like why he was that way and where it came from. It was not him, it was like it came before him. The role that my sister and my mother had in the family because of machismo and sexism. So basically I tell that at the same time that I talk about being bullied in school. It's a very happy talk. And then basically my drag persona came out, I guess, like 2 years ago, but it was like so connected to everything that happened in my childhood, because my name, my nickname is Chris, but my whole name is Crisagon. So, you know, in order to make fun of me for being queer and like, you know, feminine, they would put an A to the end of my name, which happens in Latin-based languages to turn something into a feminine word. So they would call me Crisagona. And then when I decided to do drag, I always think about, you know, things related not only to sexuality, but gender in gender stereotypes, gender roles. And so that name came so fast to me because, you know, I wanted to transform something that was like so painful and so hurtful to me as a queer boy that I decided to take it back and take that name and actually make it into something beautiful that, you know, brings joy and brings art and brings, you know, like sparkles and glitter and actually like makes people happy. And that also people applaud and, you know, like instead of just, you know, dehumanizes and makes fun of. So kind of like
you didn't stop there. You just kind of kept running with it, and it keeps getting bigger and more powerful. And now you're launching a new project as Chris Sagona, and I would love for you to talk about that.
Right. So I'm very excited about this because I always loved animation since I was a kid, from, you know, X-Men from the 90s, or any sort of cartoon that was on in Brazilian TV or anime. So as I was doing my comics for the Matthew Shepard Foundation, I started using my comics from Out and About from 5 years when I created the project. Then I turned it into, I created another series last year. So after I started doing drag, I thought, like, wouldn't it be nice to have like a comic with a drag queen superhero? So I basically pitched the idea to them, and they're like, sure, like go ahead, like you do whatever you want. They liked the idea, and I started as a comic strip series with Chris Sagona as a drag queen who also works as a superhero. But it's always connected to gender stereotypes, gender roles, and sexuality. So it's always connected to LGBTQIA issues. And they liked it. So I decided to, now that I have a YouTube channel, I decided to turn that into an animation. So I am doing a fundraiser on Facebook. We're so close to reaching our goal. We have like a week left. And I got in touch with this Brazilian animation studio who is also owned by a friend of mine who is non-white, who is also queer. The animator is also a drag queen. So yeah, so I just wanted to turn this into something, you know, not that I didn't do by myself. Like I like to involve and connect and work with people creatively. That's like just, it feeds me. I really like it. So that's what I've been doing now. And if we reach the goal, we'll have 8 mini episodes because they're based on comic strips. So they are very tiny, and they will premiere, the first one, October 11th, National Coming Out Day. So please donate.
And so definitely a reminder to our crew, please donate, or anyone listening, watching. I always think we're on a radio show for some reason. But we'll also be taking some Q&A questions shortly. So please feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll get them sent over to us. But Baruch, you also work in the superhero game, so to speak. And I'd love for you to talk about your own project that's kind of about empowerment and specifically kind of for the Latino community.
Yeah, so basically the We Can Be Heroes project happened because MACLA, which is this incredible museum in San Jose, they called me one day and they were like, hi, we just saw one of your shows. We heard that you started Donde Está Mi Gente? My background is in comedy and poetry and performance art. And so I was tired of going to these shows in San Francisco where it was like, art spaces were full of white people and like me, or like a lot of white people, one black guy and like me. And I, at one point, realized that I had been doing all these shows where I was the only Latino or the only Mexican or often the only queer person. I got a little tired, so I started Donde Está Mi Gente so that I could put these shows together featuring Latinx, Latino writers and performers. So that took off and did really well. We've been doing regular shows. And then, so MACLA called me and they said, hi, we heard you like comic books. Do you want to do a comic book project with us? And I said, yes, like right away on the phone. And they were like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want you to pay me to gather writers that are Latino and queer. And I want you to pay us to create some new characters. so that we can put them all in one story. So that's kind of how the We Can Be Heroes project started. I reached out to two people that I've always wanted to work with. One is Luna Merbruja, who is a poet and a performer herself. She's a trans Latina activist, and she's done a bunch of shows with me, and is also a huge superhero fan. And her and I would, get together and have coffee and talk about what it would be like to create our own superheroes. And then I reached out to Terry Blas, who I'd been a fan of. And as soon as I mentioned I wanted to do something like this, a bunch of my comic book friends, like Sina Grace and Justin Hall, both were like, you should work with Terry Blas. And I was like, yes, I should. So I reached out to Terry, and right away he was interested in working with us. But then too, I have a lot of background in community work. I want to not just work with people in my circle. So we made it a big contest. We made it literary focused. We had a short story contest to see who could create and write a new queer Latino superhero. And I pushed it as much as I could with what I had. And we got two winners. So one winner was this trans guy, Afro-Latino named Kane Nielsen, who turns out is also a writer and a comic. And then Caitlin Hernandez was one of the other winners. So together we came up with these characters behind me. And the project is gonna culminate in a graphic novel that will also be, it's gonna have several factors because I love to torture myself. It's gonna be a performance piece. We're gonna narrate the comic once it's done with some actors and myself or the writers, whoever chooses to voice their character can. Originally, we were supposed to perform it at Makla a while ago, but we just, keep having obstacles. The first obstacle was I had cancer, so that sucked. We had to put it on hold for a year. And then when I was feeling better, I gathered them all and I emailed them. I was like, guys, we're gonna get back to work on this. And then it came back. And so that sucked, but now it's hopefully gone, knock on wood. And we were gonna get ready to work on it again. And then Corona happened. So it's had a lot of obstacles, but I'm still working on it. I'm still working on the script. I just actually had a talk with Zip Alegria, who is the Latino comic book artist who's going to be creating the final book yesterday. And we're still going to do it. It's going to end up as a graphic novel, a performance piece, and hopefully some sort of serialized podcast. I'm still talking with Makla about that, but that was really fun to do and to talk with other. But the best part was that most of us, except for Terry, were not professional comic book creators or illustrators. Something that I unfortunately like to shoot myself in the foot is if I don't have experience in something, I like doing it anyway. I feel like if I want to do something, I feel like I just want to do it because there's enough white people telling you not to do something. And so that was kind of like my drive behind this project, that that anybody can write a comic book and anybody can draw one and be creative and make it happen, especially people of color. It's something I tell everyone I meet who's a queer person of color. Be creative, do your own projects. If the path isn't there, make that path, build that bridge.
And kind of building on that, I want to talk to Kat about kind of her path and the bridges that she's made. Kind of tell us about Miss Quince's. No spoilers if you don't feel comfortable, but at least kind of give us a tease.
Yeah. So Miss Quince is basically like a sort of autobio comic based on my own experience. Semi-autobio, I think that's the term to use. And when I was younger, I mean, even today, I just dealing with self-identity issues because I didn't feel quite feminine, but also, I didn't really have a name or term for what I felt at the time. And, having a quinceañera while you're like a tomboy with no femininity in my bone, it was kind of like awkward and a weird time for me. So I kind of wanted to make a middle grade book, not only explaining what comes with a quinceañera, like all the rituals and all the sacrifices that families have to make, but also just having like a kind of like a coming of age story about it, an experience I don't know how to explain it without giving any like spoilers.
No, that's fine. So kind of what were the challenges in not just creating this book? Because I mean, we've all, like Baruch had said, real life keeps getting in the way. But what are some of the challenges in trying to sell a book that's kind of so specific today? Like, did you have any kind of adversity in dealing with the subject matter?
I feel like I'm so used to making work that is autobio. The wall that kind of was there before, in terms of just like spilling out like personal details, have been like gone by then. So just it kind of like making this work, I feel like it's like important for me to do it, especially for like young teens and kids who kind of need that like inspiration and kind of need someone to show them like the ropes, because I didn't really have anyone showing me, you know, what I'm supposed to expect with the quinceañera and all that. And so I think the challenges I had before was like doubting myself, like whether someone really wants to read it. Because, you know, like when you're working on comics, it's kind of like a solitary work. Like you don't really have anyone else around you, you know, like at the time of you making the work. So like to have your book out there, it's kind of intimidating sometimes because you don't know if someone's going to read it or kind of resonate with it. And I think that's mostly the challenge, kind of getting over that doubt and kind of pushing your work out there and kind of hoping that someone would kind of really read it and love the work.
Well, I already love the work, and I love, at least when in the announcement, it will be published simultaneously in English and in Spanish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
So let's do some round robin real quick. Kat, lead us off. Who's your favorite X-Men? It's clear that no one likes any other superheroes, so let's just.
I had a huge crush on Rogue and Shadowcat.
I'm a big Storm guy myself. Krissa?
Storm all the way. Since I don't know why, because
How did I know you'd pick Storm?
Storm. Because I don't know, she's so powerful and so exuberant, and you know, some people say that she's basically a drag queen. I don't know, like she's just, I don't know, there's so much, and she's so powerful and so confident.
Yeah.
And I think I basically I wanted to be her when I was little. Like I wanted to have that confidence and that power.
Baruch, did you also want to be Storm, or did you want to be a different X person?
Oh, I think Storm is the best like character of all time, but my favorite of all time is Rogue. She's my girl. I don't know if y'all like this t-shirt I'm wearing. It's a great t-shirt. But yeah, I've always liked Rogue, not just because she's amazing and strong and powerful and all that stuff, but I just think it's one of the greatest like redemption arcs. Like people talk about Zuko all the time, you know, like, oh, Zuko, what a great redemption, which it is. Zuko's amazing, but like I don't think people talk enough about how Rogue represents coming from like a really rough background and doing some bad things and just turning yourself into a superhero by like risking your life and, I don't know, saving Wolverine's fiance. But also longevity. She's been an X-Men member since like 1980 something and only left for a bit to have a few comas, but she's back.
I mean, she's been putting the work in as much as fictional characters can. Jacoby, who is your favorite X person?
I would probably say Nightcrawler, but recently I think Dakin or Dakin.
Ooh,
because of the X Factor book.
There are all sorts of reasons to like Dakin. Yes.
Yes.
Terry?
Growing up, it was Rogue. She was the star of the first X-Men comic I bought. But nowadays, it's definitely Phoenix. Just because she has the power to waste everyone.
Claudia.
Well, I'm more of a cartoon X-Men person myself, but my favorite was Rogue and Kitty. But lately I've been more of a Storm stan because I believe she's the coolest, absolute coolest.
So we have a few more minutes to ask some questions from the audience. If someone wants to check in, I'm not going to ask everyone, but for those of you who are independently publishing or self-publishing, kind of what is the biggest challenge you faced in getting your work out there? I mean, I will say as someone who's independently published, I think just getting eyeballs on it is especially hard. And even if you have a publisher support, that doesn't always mean marketing support. And I've learned kind of the hard way in the past couple of years, how much of that you don't have to, your legwork work doesn't stop when you find a publisher. It only increases because you have more people to help you. It's like, at least for me. Chris, is how you unmuted?
Yes, I think I worked mostly as an independent artist, and I got a book published in Brazil. So I would just like to say that, you know, being published by a publisher doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to being independent. So I think you have always to do both if possible, or, you know, unless you really want to, and you have the access and the, yeah, just the access to having a publisher. But yeah, just like keep working, and it's hard to get paid. That's the most difficult thing as an independent artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Carissa, do you have a dream project you'd love to work on? Or I feel like you might be living it.
Yes, I am living it, but I also have this other project in Brazil for my Brazilian audience and that's on a hiatus currently, which is we have a dialect, an LGBTQIA dialect in Brazil that is from the 70s, and it just evolved to this day. Oh. So I started creating an illustrated dictionary of each word from that dialect. And I love languages, and I love to know what things mean in the origin, the etymology. So my dream project, I always say this, is like being able to travel the world and meet people who are queer from other countries and other cultures, and learn about their specific language, and maybe turn this into like something that we can do together, or I can help them, or I just want to like just save the language, or like help somehow bringing that language to the illustrated, the comics world.
Sure. And another question from the group, kind of, have you been received in the comics industry? Does anyone have any really positive memories of fans or creator interactions? I know I got a t-shirt once that a fan made me based off of something the characters wear in Dodge City, and that kind of made me cry.
I guess I can say a while back I did 2 small educational comics called You Say Latino and You Say Latinx. And I've had interactions at conventions.
Positive comment about that in the chat, actually, from a Sarah.
Oh, wait, what?
About your Latino.
Oh, but yeah, I think that short educational comics have like a big power behind them, because people will read them quickly, as opposed to like, you know, a long chunk of like text. But at conventions and whatnot, I've received some nice comments from people, and some of the nice reception I've received is that like universities like Duke and Harvard and whatnot have, you know, used some of those comics in educational settings. So that's been really nice to see. I don't know, makes me feel like I'm not throwing my comics into a void sometimes.
Has anyone else had any really positive experiences with fans or other creators? Claudia?
I do. Mostly, I have a bunch of beautiful experiences, but this one was about 2 years ago, more or less. And I was publishing this comic called Morning in America with Max Bisagio. And I was really excited because it's one of my best works to date. And I was in a convention back here in Mexico, in my hometown, and there were a bunch of kids who were like about 15, 16, and they came to my table. And the first experience was with this, I think they were cousins, kid like something like 13, 14, and her bigger cousin, a boy, 16, 17. And they were like browsing my comics, and then I noticed that she was dressing exactly like the main character of the comic. And then I showed her, and she completely freaked out, and she was like, oh my god, it's me, I'm gonna buy it. And they gave me like the exact change, because they only had like some coins, and they were like, this is so cool, I'm gonna see myself in the comic. And she was because the character is Mexican.
Yeah.
And I told her, like, this is a Mexican kid who is in the United States experiencing the end of the world. That's really cool. There's monsters. And the kid was like, I love monsters, I love this story, I love everything. And fast forward, I think it was about January or something like that, before all of this. And the boy sent me a message on Instagram, and he told me, like, he said, hi, I don't know if you remember us, but me and my cousin bought your book, and we're making our own comic. And that made me really, I don't know, I cried a little, and I was so happy for them, because they were so inspired by what they read, that they wanted the rest of the comic, because they only had the first number, so they were like super behind, and they wanted to make their own stories. And that was like really, really cute. I just love them.
Oh my
I
God,
love them really hard.
This thing I've ever heard. So kind of jumping on that, Claudia, I'll have you go first, but do you have any short, like brief advice for maybe the next generation of creators? Is there something you wish you knew, or something you think is really important?
I wish I had the internet back then, because everyone can do whatever their heart desires. And what I told these kids, that they just do whatever you want to do, and show it around. You will get criticisms. You will get people that's gonna like whatever you're doing, and you're going to be more confident in your abilities as you go on.
Yeah.
And just do stuff. Enjoy the ride. That's the most important part. Just love what you're doing.
Yeah, Baruch, do you have any similar advice for the next generation?
Yeah, just don't let anybody say no to you. Art's for everybody. One of the nice things that happened to me after we first presented We Can Be Heroes in San Jose at MACLA, 5 of the kids in the audience came up to me and they were like, oh, I didn't know, I thought comic book superheroes were for white people, which is why I had never even tried to read them. And I was like, oh, no. They're not just for white people. And I just gave them all the info I could. Everything from like, Richter, like Richter and Shatterstar to other, America Chavez. And I'm still in contact with those folks. They're still, they're experiencing their own, they're learning about comic books and reading them and consuming them. But yeah, my advice is don't let anybody say no. It's for everybody, and just be creative and work hard. And yeah.
Amazing. Jacoby, do you have any advice for fellow artists or people trying to get into comics?
Well, I still feel like I'm still starting to get into comics. But
you're welcome.
Yeah. But no, I feel like the most like I've learned is really like kind of put yourself out there. They're like the people I met in comics have been like super nice to me. And also kind of like the typical saying, like, write what you know, because the book that I like self-published last year was Angel Boy.
I love Angel Boy.
That's and like I'm currently working on that to make it like a full graphic novel. But like releasing just even like the small, like this little guy, just releasing that and having people like reply to me like, oh, I love this, and like this one was a really personal story, and it made me feel very welcomed. And I think it's like I really had to put myself out there to really make it. So I think that.
Kat, what is your advice?
I guess you don't need fancy equipment, or you can make a comic out of Sharpies and make a zine out of whatever. Just make something that you would want to read, something that you would want to get for yourself, and just go to zine conventions and meet people and make friends in the community and be nice.
Yeah, tell people, don't burn bridges, be infinitely patient, infinitely kind, and I promise it'll It'll percolate up, and the ones you don't like will go away. Krista, do you have any short advice?
Yes. So first of all, don't be afraid to put your work out. No one is ever perfect. Second of all, make sure you believe in what you're doing, and also like make sure that you have people around you who believe in your ideas, that don't make fun of, like, try to, tell you, oh, this is never gonna work, or, make sure you have those people in your life as well. Because in those little moments in which you will not believe so much in your work, which, they happen, those people are gonna be there for that reason. And also tell your truth, and even if it's fiction, it might not be autobiographical work, but like tell your truth and the things that you believe in instead of what you think people will like, because that's, make sure it's authentic. If you try to please, or if you try to do something that people will like, that doesn't come off as authentic. Like, just be yourself in your work as well.
And Terry?
I guess the advice I would give would be to not worry so much about like finding inspiration somewhere, or finding, like seeking out inspiration. The advice I would give would be to dedicate yourself more to disciplining yourself to, like, when you work at home, and as a lot of us know now, but when you work at home, like, there's nobody telling you to get out of bed. There's nobody to, like, making a schedule for you. There's nobody doing those things. So motivating yourself to work and disciplining yourself to, have a structure can be difficult. But if you can do those things, then you will be working more. And the more you work, the more you'll be inspired.
That's beautiful. And kind of, so I'll have you kind of walk us out, but Terry, you go first. Tell us where people can find you online.
The best place to find my work, well, Twitter and Instagram, I'm just at Terry Blas. It's just my name. And my website is terryblas.com.
Claudia, can you tell us where anyone can find you to follow your work?
Sorry. I'm Claudia Aguirre with 1 A and 2 R's everywhere. And my website is claudiaaguirre.net. And that's it.
Beautiful. Jacoby.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at notjacoby, and also my website, jacobysalcadoart.com.
And Kat.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as at catfcomics, and I also have comics and illustrations at fajardo.com.
Beautiful. Krissa. Oh, I think Krissa might have frozen. Baruch, can you tell us where people can find you?
Sure, hi. I'm on Twitter at Baruch is on fire. That's B as in boy, ARUCH. On Instagram, it's my full name at Baruch Porras Hernandez. And same goes for my website, just my whole name, Baruch Porras Hernandez. Please follow me on Twitter. I only have 2 followers.
Krissa, please tell us where to find you.
Thank you.
Krissa, how can people find you online?
Oh, did I crash?
You did it.
Oh, okay. So I'm Chris Sagona, just like you can read either here or here on your screen. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube as well. And you can also donate to my fundraiser to make my animation with a drag superhero happen by donating. The link is on my Instagram bio.
Beautiful. And I'm Josh Trujillo, Trujillo. You can find me online at Lost His Keysman. That's me on Twitter and on Instagram, or on joshtrujillo.com. Thank you again to the Museum of Latin American Art, our sponsor Hyundai, and of course the Latin Comics Expo. So thank you guys. I hope we get to see you all next year. Stay safe.
Thank you, Josh.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Buenas noches.